This movie is so boring and meaningless, it's frustrating. And it's funny that it's called Awakening because it keeps putting me to sleep. Underworld is one of my favorite franchises to ever exist, with Rise of the Lycans being my favorite movie out of all of them. Over the years, this franchise has dropped banger after banger after banger, and I was feeling the hype. And then I watched this movie, and now I'm disappointed, angry, and puzzled. There are so many things that didn't need to happen in this movie. Matter of fact, the whole movie didn't need to happen. So, anyway, the synopsis of the movie is Celine, a vampire warrior, finds out that the humans have decided to eradicate her kind and leads a battle along with another vampire and a young girl against them. After Alexander Corvinus dies, suddenly humans found out about vampires and werewolves. No, I don't buy that. I mean, even though Alexander was cleaning up after both sides for centuries, you mean to tell me that neither side is competent enough to stay hidden on their own? Wow. And seeing vampires get overpowered by regular humans is laughable and unbelievable. The best thing about these movies is Celine. Watching Celine just be a badass is all I need in this life. And the thing about Michael is that he can go from doing something badass to doing something stupid, like when he was waiting on Celine to get on the boat. A group of soldiers were getting ready to attack him. And I am not joking when I say he rips off his shirt, transforms, roars, and just stands there and gets shot. So, is this supposed to be the big bad hybrid Victor was so afraid of? That he killed his own daughter? Really? Really? And what hurts even more is that Michael is no longer in the movie. And the reason why is because the director or whatever said that the two first movies focused on the romance between Michael and Celine. So now that they have a daughter, he wanted to focus more on Celine and her daughter's relationship, which would be fine if we got to see the daughter again. She doesn't even come back in the next movie. I think that there should have been a movie between Evolution and this, because vampires and werewolves being discovered and humanity trying to defend themselves against them would be a good movie. You know what? You could have just done that and scrap Awakening and then move on to the next installment. Everything feels like it came out of nowhere, despite there being a narration and flashback at the beginning of the movie. Yo, Celine being able to see through Eve's eyes because Eve's her daughter, I think that's a really cool ability. I like that ability. I'll give you points for that. I'll give you points for that. And can someone please explain to me why we're focusing on human characters and they're not even good characters? They're so boring. And oh, there's a scene where cops are investigating a dead body that was obviously killed by a werewolf, and one of the detectives naturally brings it up, and the other one is like, no, it can't be. We haven't seen them in a long time. Dude, did you ever think that they could have gone in hiding? It's not out of the question. I promise you that. I don't know if it's just me, but I think they're talking a little bit too much in this movie. I don't know. It's kind of getting on my nerves. Because we all know why we watch Underworld. It's an action packed movie with gore, cool fight scenes, guns, pretty good werewolf transformations, and interesting lore. And I don't think this movie does it really well. So let me explain what I meant. Rise of the Lycans was a prequel movie about werewolves becoming unoppressed, and it had a good amount of dialogue in it. But I think it worked there because it was trying to expand on the lore and tell an interesting story, and the characters did it justice with their performances. But in this story, it's not that interesting. The story is not that interesting, and the action is spread too far apart, so it's mainly just talking. And did I mention that there's a whole lot of talking, and it feels like they're only talking to clue us in on certain things. And the characters, their performances aren't really anything to note apart from David and Celine. Hold on, I need to talk about this. So there's a scene in the movie where Celine, Eve, and David are trying to get away from werewolves in a van, and out in the open, the werewolves are fully transformed, running down the streets, passing people, and no one is freaking out. No one is reacting at all. Not even the people driving the cars. The werewolves are jumping on their cars and they're not even reacting. It's like they're not even there. And the people on the sidewalk reacted to a car crash, but not the werewolves. Wow. And can someone please explain to me how the werewolves even became these scientists that helped the government hunt vampires? Like, we were led to believe that Lucian and his pack were the only ones in existence, and they're all dead, and there were no mention of any other packs or anything. So, where did these werewolves come from? Please let me know if you know. To me, David is an interesting character. I like the dynamic between him and his father and how they have opposing views on the coven and about leadership. So, if one were to deviate from what the franchise is about, one would dive deeper into vampire society and vampire politics and flesh out the characters and the world more. And I think Underworld is getting a reboot, and if it is, well, please do a better job and take your time planning and developing the movie and the other movies in the franchise so we don't get another awakening. Please. You know, one thing I don't like in movies is when character A has this blind faith slash loyalty to character B despite never seeing or speaking to them before. They interact for the first time, and suddenly it's, I trust you wholeheartedly. That's stupid. David had no reason to trust Celine. From his perspective, unprovoked, she killed her elders and destroyed her whole clan and fell in love with their mortal enemy, a werewolf. They don't even know why she had to do all those things. They just hate her, which is fair. But David trusts her for whatever reason and is willing to help her, even though, because he helped her, his entire coven was almost wiped from existence by the werewolves and he almost died. Also, it shouldn't be surprising that the werewolves found them. Werewolves are extremely good at tracking, whether by scent or by blood. They would have found them eventually, and the fact that no one thought of that is both frustrating and stupid. As I already said, David should not trust Celine like that, and he's literally willing to put his entire clan in danger for her. And I get that he's not as cold and stern as his father, but thinking logically, David, that is not a good idea. It would have been better if they were forced to work together because of an unforeseen and deadly situation, and even though they are weary and untrusting of one another, they would work together to get through it. And throughout the course of the movie, they learn to trust each other. Then this scene could maybe happen. And I don't think they could include that. The movie is already bloated and dragging its feet. So Eve gets captured by the werewolves. So now we learn that they want to use her blood to make themselves stronger and immune to silver, so they can be the dominant species. Boo! You may like that, but I don't. I rather Lucian any day. He saw werewolves as more than just mindless animals that kill. He took pride in being a werewolf, and as long as vampires existed, his kind will never be able to move and live freely. I respect Lucian, and it's a shame he was killed. So now Celine and the detective from earlier have teamed up and now they're fighting the werewolves to rescue Eve. And say what you want, but this is the best part of the movie. Just non-stop action and Celine is kicking ass as usual and unimportant people can't aim for shit. And I like the scene between Celine and the big bad wolf. He was beating the brakes off of her, and it's nice to know that Celine isn't all powerful. And the way she won the fight was excellent. She had to outsmart him instead of using a gun or brute force. I'll give you points for that. And Eve killed the other evil werewolf, so the good guys won. Yay! And Michael is free and roaming around somewhere. The end. So the best parts of the movie were the fight scenes and Celine and David. And they didn't really give Eve much to work with, so she's just there. The movie was like a roller coaster. It was good, then it wasn't. It was good, then it wasn't, and then it ended with a decent enough action scene. It's nowhere near as good as the ones in Underworld, Evolution, and Rise of the Lycans, which are all way better movies. Go watch those. This movie is easily the weakest in the franchise. It felt like they were trying to reinvent it, even though it was fine the way it was. Moving away from the werewolf versus vampire storyline to a vampire versus human versus werewolf thing was not it. It felt like they were trying to be more Resident Evil instead of allowing it to be its own thing. I can only imagine what kind of good movies we could have gotten if they stuck to the original storyline, and besides it being boring and nonsensical, the movie is irrelevant. You don't need to watch this film because it doesn't add anything. The next movie feels more of a continuation of evolution than this one. Nothing from this movie gets brought up really. There are no lasting effects on the story. This whole movie is just a gigantic mess. Goodbye.